You wake up in a cell. You see the gray bars. You see the small, humble bedding that you're sleeping on. And you realize that you only have a few feet any which way to move. You can get up and walk around and stir around, but you can't get through the bars. And you notice that the door is a solid steel, of course, and that there is a slit, an opening, a little slide door in the front that allows you in food. Now, the day goes by and you call out, "Hello, help, let me out." You start crying for help, but nobody comes. And you don't have anything to eat. You're just sitting there in this prison cell. And you start beating on the door. You start just crying out, and you realize nobody's coming. But then the evening rolls around, but a tray of food gets put in, and it looks something like this. It's a small plate on a little tray, and it gets dropped off. It's not much food. And of course, you take the opportunity to scream for help and say, "Who are you? Why do you have me here? Why can't you let me go?" But there's no response. The plate of food is just there. And of course, you eat the plate of food. You realize the person could have killed you if he wanted to, whoever psychopath this is. So you just consume the food and you realize you feel better. But there's no sweets, there's no snacks, there's nothing else after that. And then another 24 hours rolls around. But in the meantime, you get beverages. So you get iced tea, and maybe it's sweetened with stevia if you like it. And then, of course, you get water. And you notice that the nicer you are as the days pass, anytime you ask for it, somebody was listening and slips this tea and water and any non-calorie beverage through the bars so that you can have it. Now, at first, you were going stir crazy. At first, you were saying, "Listen, I have my rights. I can be reasonable. I have a lot of money. I'll pay you maybe. My cousin knows someone who can do a favor for you." You're pleading. You're begging to get out. You're beating on the door. You're kicking on the door. And then, of course, you're looking for trapdoors. You're looking for weak places in the walls. And you realize that's all futile. So what do? The next day rolls around. You get another meal. And this meal looks like this. It's got a nice little drink with some blueberries and some stevia, some strawberries, some nice brisket, and a little bit of rice. Or make up whatever you would like to have. And like the day before, you get to put it down. But today, you're much hungrier when you go to eat because you haven't had any other food. There's only been one meal a day delivered to you that comes through this space in the door. And you, of course, take the opportunity to say, "Listen, please, you've got to let me out. You've got to let my family know." You're just crying out, but there's no response. And the person behind the door walks away. But another day passes, and the same thing happens. You get one meal a day. You get free caloric beverages anytime you want. And the nicer you ask, "I need water, please," or "I need a non-calorie beverage," you're given it without any argument at all. So you start to go stir crazy by day 4. And you think, how bad can this get? I'm not getting enough to eat in here. And of course, how bad is this going to get? What is going to happen? So your nerves and your stress levels are going crazy. You don't even know how to compose yourself. But then something happens around day 5, day 6, day 7 in that neighborhood. You start to realize that protesting is not helping. Kicking the walls is not helping. So you start milling around in the cell. You start sitting on the bed. You start noticing the seam. You start noticing the plank. But now, instead of being as scared, you start to notice that the cell looks a little bit different. It looks like it looks now. There's still the slit in the bars. There's still the fact that you're confined, but you start to notice things around you that you didn't notice before. So what do? Maybe you get in a push-up position if you can. You get in a sit-up position, and before you know it, you're passing the time by doing exercise or just moving around and pacing. Maybe you're rehearsing what you would do if you were out. You are thinking about all the things you used to do as hobbies as you play with the garment, the little blanket you have on the bed in the prison cell. And then you take time to notice the patterns on the wall. Much the same way you notice that same tile on the wall when you're using the restroom that you stare at every day. You start to notice all the creaks, you start to notice all the patterns, you start to think about everything that you normally would never take the time to think about. So you start to think, what was the person doing who designed this wall? What was the person doing who designed these shackles? What about these bars? What are they made of? Who manufactures them? What am I going to do when I get out of here? Am I ever going to get out of here? And then it occurs to you at some point, you're not hungry anymore. You stopped thinking about food from the first day because your stress levels were high and you were in a new environment. And you didn't think so much about the food like you normally would have. And you start to realize that if you were out on your own, your life would be a lot different. Well, time goes by and you're still fed your one meal a day and as many beverages as you want. And you start to notice that your clothes are falling off you. You start to notice that everything is becoming super loose on you. Your skin is starting to stick to you. You have a lot more energy, and your stress levels and your fear levels have gone down because obviously whoever has you here could have killed you if they wanted to, but they haven't. So you're starting to make better use of your time. You're starting to make routines. You're starting to make rituals. You're getting up. Maybe you're doing push-ups. Maybe you're doing sit-ups. Maybe you're walking around. Maybe you're rehearsing something. There's not a lot you can do, but even when there isn't, you start to meditate. You sit Indian style on your little bed or maybe on the floor, and you start to look out of your cell and notice things that you didn't before. And at this point, you notice that there are people outside of the cell that for some reason don't appear to see you or understand you or hear you, but you don't even worry too much about calling out because you realize that they can't relate to your experience. And you see them eating, and you see them drinking sugary drinks and eating junk that they don't need, and you see them eating multiple times a day. You see them doing all of these things, but you notice it doesn't really matter to you anymore because you've broken in. You've been broken in. And it does all the stresses that you would have felt before, the boredom eating, the stress eating, the psychological eating when you're thinking about different ideas, concepts, or things or events in your life. All of those things have started to not have the sway that they once held over you. So you really don't have anything to do except to be at peace with yourself. Pretty soon, 2 weeks or a month goes by. And now you know that you have developed a stasis in this routine. Even though you're still very concerned with your future, you're still alert and elevated, you're becoming a different person. So maybe 3 months go by, and then you're still there. But by now, you are a hardened, poised individual. You are not a wimp. You're not going to be intimidated. And you realize that if you ever do encounter someone, by golly, you're going to have answers because you can't lose anything else. Because what can they take from you at this point? And by now, through the slit comes a bunch of new clothes because you can't fit into the other clothes. You've lost a bunch of your weight. You've lost quite a bit. Now, for the sake of our analogy here, let's go and say you need to fast for 8 months to lose down to where you want to be. 4 months, 8 months, maybe a year, maybe longer, depending on your size and your health conditions. You reach that. Your weight is off. Your mindset and your appreciation for food is different. Several things have happened. You've been broken from expecting relief from the discomfort of hunger. It is non-existent to you. You have been made again with appreciation for all of the things you took for granted before. You lost weight. You have a lot more energy, and suddenly the prison bars, the doors opened, and you realize you can leave freely. There's no one there. So you walk out, and there's no one to, of course, be called on the carpet for what they did to you, but you are a different person. And so, like in the movie Castaway, where Tom Hanks gets rescued from the island, he's sleeping on the floor and not on the bed because he's not used to that level of comfort. So you integrate back into life, but this time you're a new creature, in a sense, because you don't constantly think about snacking. You don't constantly think about all of the silly psychological comforts that you took for granted before, that you always said were there, you realize that your meal was on you. You have a newfound appreciation for efficiency, for pragmatic, adjusted living. And you realize you didn't need half, not even half, of all the things you thought you needed. You continue on with the new adjusted habits because that's the new you. You stay in a more optimistic, more energetic form of life because you're no longer the slob you went into the prison with. Well, of course, it doesn't require genius insight to see what I've been driving at here. You have to go into fasting with the expectation that things will be difficult. You have to go with the expectation that nothing more can be taken from you. Because truly changing your patterns and adjusting is incredibly difficult. It's like being in prison. I get so many emails about ways for asking for ways to hack the system and find easier ways to not be hungry or to lessen hunger. You're going at it the wrong way. You've got to put yourself in the prison, not any other prison except the prison of despair. Because when you are in the prison of despair, you become broken. You're broken, and then, as I said, you're remade. You have more energy, your blood sugar drops, your cholesterol drops, your waistline, your clothing, your energy levels increase while your size drops, and you are, in a very real sense, a new person. You even have a new outlook because your mind is not wasteful anymore. And you're not living a weak and soft life. You're living a much harder life because you realize you're operating on a level. So good or bad, if you can't do that, you will not succeed at long-term fasting. You will not succeed at rebuilding your health. Those of you who have 100 pounds to lose, you'll have it a little bit easier because you have more of an impetus to lose. I've said that before. Those of you who are just losing 35 pounds or 25 or 15 pounds, you're going to have to realize it's going to be several months or more, maybe 2 or 3 months sometimes, to kick off that weight. But if you will put yourself in the prison of despair, which is the prison of Reformation, and you stop and you get rid of all these comforts that you think you have to have, but you don't, then you will be broken and you can be remade. That's how you succeed. It's not by running away from what is difficult. You have to be broken so that you can be remade. Sometimes it takes a visit from the doctor of bad news. I've been contacted by a friend this week who got really bad news from the doctor. His blood sugar was out of control. His cholesterol, all of his vitals are out of control. The wake-up call, as they say, is what puts you in that headspace where you stop thinking, I want to be comfortable. You don't want to be comfortable anymore. You want to optimize. You want to get in high gear. You want to stop living like a pampered prince. So the prison of Reformation is the prison of despair. That's where your fasting takes off. That's where you quit worrying about all the little petty things that people say. And you quit letting your mind talk you out of succeeding. Because you know your options are limited. Just like in that gray, dank, cold prison cell, your options are limited. And it's time to start making changes. I wonder how many of you who are just finding this channel or else just sort of casually observing this channel amidst all of the others you can view on YouTube, how many of you are actually going to make the long-term changes and stop making excuses and stop living in the prison of self-indulgence, which is the opposite prison. That's the prison that kills you because it's a palace of pillows and sweet things, and the temperature is set just right. And there's no reason you ever have to really try. You just do what is convenient and what is fair weather. That's the real prison, folks. It's not the prison of deprivation. The prison of deprivation means that every time once you are released and you realize all the good things you wasted, every time you have a glass of water, every time you see a ray of sunshine, every time you sit down to a meal, you appreciate that meal because you realize all that could be taken from you. That's the real message here. What is it going to be? The prison of self-indulgence or the prison of Reformation?